Welcome to The Voice of Retail. I'm Michael LeBlanc, your host. The Voice of Retail is produced in conjunction with Retail Council of Canada and is presented by Hale, a performance marketing partner trusted by brands like ASICS, Sage, and Orange Theory to scale with focus and impact. Mark, welcome to The Voice of Retail podcast. How are you?
Michael, it's a pleasure to be here with you today.
I am a little bit shocked. I'm this far into the podcast, and you and I have crossed paths so many times at whether it's RCC events or others, but we've never had the chance to speak. And I don't really think we've actually met in any substantial way. So thanks for reaching out. This is great.
Thank you, Michael. Yeah, we're like two ships passing in the night. I did shake your hand at NRF in New York last year, but that was me and 10,000 of my closest friends.
Oh yeah, that show. You know what? I barely even made it to the show last year. There's so much stuff that happens in and around the NRF show. So some years I spend more time walking the show floor, and other times I spend less. But I'll be there again in January. What about you?
Yeah, and hey, fingers crossed, I might actually be speaking there if everything goes right and the planets align.
Good chatting, but let's jump in. So tell us and me and the listeners a little bit about yourself. How did you get to be you, and what do you do for a living?
Well, simply put, and this sounds quite remarkable, I count how many people go into retail stores.
It's a good brand. It's a good thing to do. So how did you get to be you? Like, did you always want to be in, where did your interest in retail come from? Where did your interest in kind of math and talking about this stuff? Where did that originate?
Well, I never said I was good at math, Michael, so we should clear that up right away. You know what? Like so many of us, I worked in retail while I was attending university. Mm-hmm. And it was really during one of my stints working as the marketing manager of a single location computer store in Edmonton that I stumbled upon the importance of traffic counting. Yeah. And that's where it all began.
Now, did you grow up in Edmonton? Where'd you grow up?
I am born and raised in Edmonton. However, I did live in Montreal for about a year and found myself back in Edmonton. And that's where I still am, and where HeadCount is still based today.
All right. Well, you're a fellow Rethink Retail Top expert with me. Like I said, I couldn't miss an opportunity to get on the mic. This is your third book, right? Not your first, not your second, but when retail customers count. So talk about why you write books and who you write them for.
Okay, so yeah, when retail customers count, it was a fit of entrepreneurial desperation that caused me to become an author. The truth of the matter is, when I founded this company called HeadCount, which I believed it was something that every retailer would want to do, and that is measure how many people visit their stores and what percentage of those visitors actually made a purchase. I thought it would be pretty easy going. I would call up a retailer and they would say, "Mark, where have you been all our lives?" That's not what I discovered, though. What I got, Michael, was retailers saying, "Why would I want to count traffic in my stores? What is this going to tell me?" I
got transactions for that, right?
Exactly.
Transactions and an assumption. Yeah, transactions and an assumption. So, what's the breakthrough for in those conversations? Because I still talk to a lot of retailers who just count transactions. They don't count ins and outs. I did at Pandora. It was wonderful. You had conversion numbers. It's a blessing. And I mean, it opened your eyes to a lot of stuff. But talk about that narrative for me.
Yeah, I think it's one of the great, misnomers, and that is that sales transaction counts are a close enough proxy for store visits. And the truth of the matter is they're not. And in some cases, it's not even remotely close. And so if the retailer doesn't understand how many visits they got relative to those transactions, they have no idea of how many potential missed opportunities they have. They're flying blind when it comes to scheduling their labor, because instead of scheduling it versus the traffic and the visits in the store, they're scheduling it relative to only those people that made a purchase. And so what I discovered, Michael, as I started to reach out to retailers, and I continued to get that response, and that is, what is this going to tell me that I don't already know? I thought to myself, well, who's ever said anything about traffic counting? What reference is there for retailers and marketers to really look at. And I said to myself, look, my little business was fledgling at that point. I wasn't very successful at getting retailers to use our traffic counting service. So I said, hey, why don't I write a book about it and describe all the ways that store traffic and conversion data can inform these really critical operational decisions. And so it took me about a year to do it on evenings and weekends. And I wrote When Retail Customers Count, which was the first book ever written dedicated to the topic. And then about 5 years later, I decided that, wow, there's just so much that I and my team learned by analyzing retailers' traffic and conversion trends that I wrote my second book, Conversion, the Last Great Retail Metric. And what I did, Michael, is I then sent this book out directly to retailing CEOs and executives. And guess what? They started taking my calls. The calls led to meetings. Meetings led to the business growing. And we've been at this as a dedicated focus of our lives for 22 years now.
Now, you mentioned the NRF in New York. So do you work across North America? What's your remit and who do you help?
Well, we work with retailers from single location specialty stores to thousands of store chain enterprises. Primarily our work is North America, but we do have installations and do work with retailers in over 20 countries, from Iceland to Australia, all through Central America. And what I've discovered doing this is that the foundational ideas around store traffic and shopper conversion apply. They apply as much in a place like Guatemala or Nicaragua as they do in Manhattan.
Now, do you describe your organization as a technology solution or advisory service or consulting or a mix of both? How do you describe yourself?
Primarily, we define ourselves as an analytics as a service. So we collect the traffic count data, we marry it with the retailer's transactional data, and then we provide reporting and insights from stores, regions, districts, all the way up to executives on a daily basis. And we do additional work around, deeper dives into data, providing, insight into specific questions retailers may have. But our primary focus is really providing store traffic and conversion insights as almost a utility service, which I think every retailer should be using. It's just as vital as point of sale, electricity, and even internet access, I would argue.
It's a little bit unusual, or I should say rare, to talk to a vendor, if I can call you a vendor in this context, that services from indies, one store, up to national chains. So that's interesting that it's so approachable. Talk about that a little bit. It's a SaaS-based platform, so it sounds very, very scalable. I don't want to get in the nuts and bolts, but it's just interesting that the listeners, even if they're operating 1 or 5 stores, or like you said, 1,000, they can still take advantage of your services. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, look, if we separate services and just say, what about the needs of a single location retailer versus a chain? At the end of the day, they're substantially the same. You need to know how many people are visiting and precisely at what time of day so that you can align your staff and understand if your marketing was working. Now, remember, I started this when I worked in a single location computer store in Edmonton. We were just a single store. But I had realized that as the marketing manager, I was driving traffic into the store, and at the end of the day, the store owner would count the money in the till and go, risky, that was only it was just okay.
Right.
Why didn't we generate more in business? And here's the problem, Michael. I could see, we were a single store. I could see the store was teeming with prospects, people coming in, visiting, wanting to buy a personal computer. This is back in 1994. So it was a $5,000 investment, it took an associate to actually help with. But our team, we had a great frontline team, 25 associates. They couldn't get to everyone. They couldn't deliver the kind of service. And so I watched as people visited the store and left without buying. And that's when I thought, gosh, we need to understand how many people are coming in so that we can really understand, A, how impactful that promotion and advertising was, and B, so that we can hopefully convert more of those visits into sales in the future.
So you got a third book, another book, Store Traffic is a Gift. I love that title. I'm a big fan of stores and store traffic. When you think about attention spans online versus the time spent in store, it's no wonder that retailers are focusing. I wouldn't say refocusing. I mean, there's a bit of I think it's a false narrative that stores are back. They never went anywhere, but I think it's got a higher order. Is that what kind of got you thinking around the new book? And talk about it.
Yeah, it certainly has. Anyone in the industry and anyone who's been following the industry well knows that physical stores never went away, even through the pandemic. But I mean, certainly there was a presumption on the part of many in the media and the public writ large that, brick and mortar retailers were all going to go away.
Yeah.
But what happens? So the COVID pandemic smashes into the retail industry like a meteor. Instead of serving customers, frontline teams were disinfecting surfaces, cashiers were encased in plexiglass. It was an Alice in Wonderland store experience, really.
It's crazy time.
Up was down, down was up. Yeah. Everything that was going on was antithetical to what a great store experience was. And that changed how not only retailers had to retail, but shoppers shopped. And so as I was, I'm in the traffic counting business. Well, there's not much to count when half the stores close. And it was startling to see a retailer that would normally get hundreds of thousands of visits across their enterprise in a day dwindle to nothing. And I saw it with my very own eyes. And it occurred to me that given this tumultuous change that the COVID-19 pandemic brought, I needed to really update these fundamental ideas around store traffic and conversion. What is a store? What does store traffic mean in the age of buy online, pick up in store? How does it impact? How is it impacted by things like curbside pickup and other services that just accelerated during this time? And that's when I got the idea that not only did I need to update these ideas, but I needed to remind retailers of how precious that store traffic is. It truly is a gift, and it's a gift that you don't fully appreciate until it's gone. And that is the overarching message that I have in this book.
We'll be right back after these messages. The Voice of Retail is brought to you by Hale, the partner behind some of the fastest growing DTC and retail brands in North America. Hale is recognized for senior teams who cut out the noise and keep their focus on what matters most: growth. Their approach is based on outcomes, not hours. They are selective with who they partner with, bringing speed, accountability, and a clear strategy to every engagement. Paid media, content, performance, all of it connects directly to real results. That's why brands like A6 Sage and Orange Theory choose Hale to help them scale. Learn more at wearehale.com. There's been cases where retailers have partnered with other online retailers to take returns, for example, and say, well, we're going to win because we're driving traffic. It doesn't always work out, but can you comment on your thinking around, is all traffic good traffic? Like the old saying about PR, all ink is good ink, but is there a qualitative difference in your mind? I mean, obviously you're trying to understand conversions, but as an operator, as a marketer, whoever you are trying to drive traffic, every tactic could drive traffic, but maybe not always every traffic driver is the best way to go about it. What do you think?
Yeah, you hit on a really important notion, and that is, and I think I would answer in one word: intentionality. The intentionality of that store visit when somebody's going into a store to drop off an Amazon return is very different than a visitor to a store that's there to actually look for the goods or shop for the goods that retailer has. But, this idea, Michael, is really underpinned by the false assumption that many retailers to this day still have, and that is traffic equals sales, or all I need to do to drive sales is to drive traffic. And as I point out in the book, I have scads of data that show retailers that have more traffic but lower sales because they don't convert the traffic they have, and other cases where retailers may have less traffic but actually increase their sales because they're able to convert more of that intentional traffic. So to your point, no, not all traffic is the same, and retailers should stop believing that it is the same. And when you measure store traffic and conversion rates, you can see it plain as day.
We were, what are we, almost 14, 15 minutes in, we haven't said AI, so let's tick that box a little bit. So I've been talking to retailers, and they're starting to turn their minds pretty quickly to how consumers are using AI to make decisions, whether that's to go online, but I think it's more fundamental than that. How are you thinking about the changing landscape within which retailers operate to drive quality traffic to the stores, and then once they're there, get their head up out of their phone and convert them into a sale?
Yeah, well, these are exciting times, and certainly AI holds great promise in doing so many things, including improving, we'll say retail productivity. In fact, I stumbled on a recent white paper from Google that it's extolling the virtues of AI to improve retail productivity. And I was not at all surprised that one of the inputs in this white paper that they describe is store traffic. But here's the thing, Michael. AI, and I don't believe any retailer can AI or algorithm their way to success. The truth of the matter is, if you can apply any kind of technology or solutions on your store operating model, but if that store operating model fundamentally is flawed or not optimal, you're not going to generate better results necessarily, or not as effective or not as efficiently as you could. And to speak to AI, because it's running in so many directions and so fast, it's virtually impossible to keep up. But there's one thing that I can say with absolute certainty, and that is AI is driven by one thing primarily, and that's data. Clean, reliable, first-party, accurate data. And that's what store traffic is. It's foundational. Clint Malman, the COO and president of London Drugs, said this in his introduction to my talk at the Retail Council of Canada's store conference this last June. And he said that store traffic is the denominator to which you compare all the things that you do in your physical stores. And I couldn't have said it better.
Well, Clint's been on the pod, and he and I have known each other for many years. Now, you and I know someone else. We have someone else in common. Probably have many people in common. But it was the great Neil Saunders. The great Neil Saunders wrote the introduction to your book. How do you know Neil? I mean, he's a fantastic chronicler and analyst, and he said, he liked the fact that you're translating these analytics into everyday language. So I guess that two parts. One is talk about how you got to know Neil a little bit, just I guess in the circle of our various community relationships, but also who should read your book? Like, who should be buying this book? It's not just CEOs, right?
Okay, so let's start with Neil Saunders. So I've been a commentator on a retail news site called Retail Wire for just over 8 years, and Neil Saunders has as well. And so over 8 years of making almost daily posts or commentary on different events, activities, the tumult in the retail industry, we sort of got to know each other through the writing that we used to do with the other, as they call them, brain trust colleagues on Retail Wire.
Right.
And when it was time to write this book, this last book, Store Traffic is a Gift, there was only one person that I even asked to write the foreword for the book, and it was Neil Saunders, who I believe has taken on the mantle as probably the most prolific and thoughtful retail industry commentator and retail anthropologist in the industry today. And so I was I was flattered beyond words when I reached out to him, and he immediately agreed to write this foreword, and I think he just hit it right on the head. The pandemic has come up a couple of times in our conversation, and I'm less interested in the history of it, but more interested in the lasting implications from the pandemic and the COVID era. From one thing that I think about is consumers' willingness to swap and change got accelerated, right? They broke habits, long-standing habits. How do you think of the changes we can call it in our post-COVID era that happened because of happened to store traffic and the things you think about? Well, I think first and foremost, it changed the nature of what a store visit is all about. So whether that's, the acceleration of services like buy online, pick up in store, or buy online, return to store, curbside pickup, all these things have played a role in changing what shopper traffic actually even means and how to interpret conversion rates. But I think another big change is just the vast array of choices and options that shoppers have to acquire literally any product that they desire. And so that has now created, I think, an urgency that retailers need to embrace. And that is, the moment that shopper crosses the threshold, you have to assume that they're there to buy, number one. And number two, if they don't buy that day, if you're not able to serve that customer, there's no guarantee they're ever coming back. That's just the truth. And so I think that if retailers embrace what that visit means, just think about the effort it takes. You know, when you shop online, you can click on an ad, you can look at stuff, and you're gone in a minute. But when you physically drive to a store, get out of your car, walk into this physical store, you're there to buy. You know, physical retailers have a profound shopper conversion advantage over online retailers.
100%. 100%.
They got to play to their strength. And that strength is the moment that shopper enters the store, what kind of experience are you going to deliver?
How do you see the intersection in that moment? You know, what is often called moments of truth. But how do you see the intersection of technology and people? You know, if in the one hand, consumers are walking in, they may be heads down on their phone. Associates have a vast amount of information to try to understand. So more and more associates are walking around with handhelds. I had a great experience with an associate in a retail place. Neither of us could find what we were looking for. He just popped out his device, and it was a great experience. But you know, we don't want it to be too driven by technology because there's still that people element. But what's your advice on balancing those two things?
Yeah, I think you're hitting it again right on the head. It's like, I think the pendulum is swung a little too far in trying to use tools and technology to actually serve the customer. You know, I'll take something like, let's take a solution like task management. I think that there's great possibilities in the value of making it easier for store level personnel to really understand what tasks they should focus on. The only quibble I have with that is the very first task should be serve the damn customer. And that's what gets lost in so many shopping experiences that, you know, the frontline teams, these are great, hardworking people in most cases that are really there trying to do the best they can. But they're going to do what they're being asked to do. And if that is focus on tasks, that's what they're going to do. Look, I think technology is a great enabler, but you can't forget about the customer. And unfortunately, too often that's the case.
So let's wrap up with some advice. I mean, obviously a big theme of the book is conversion, right? Not just the quality of quantity, but also the conversion. And what's your advice for the listeners who are listening, for the retailers who are listening? And let's frame it in 2 starts and 1 stop, because you've got such a vast experience, you and the team. So you see a lot of things and talk about a lot of things, and the environment's changing too, right? So 2 things they should start doing right now, and 1 thing that they should stop. Maybe it's just not working anymore, or maybe you see it as often as one of those things that has never worked.
Yeah, number 1 stop is stop believing that your sales transaction counts are a close enough proxy for store visits. So that's number 1. Store visits represent the ultimate demand signal in your store, and it contextualizes everything. So that's number 1. Stop using transactions as a proxy. What they should do, and if there was only 1 piece of advice I would give any retailer of any size in any category, it's simply this: align your frontline store team labor schedule to when people are actually visiting your store, not to the sales results. Your store could be teeming with customers like my computer store was in 1994. But these people that left without buying, there's no visibility. These aren't people that fill out the customer survey, which often is given to you on your receipt after you made the purchase. But what about those people that visited and left without buying? You don't even know they showed up if you don't count traffic.
None of us have a crystal ball, but after 20 years of doing this, you got a pretty good perspective. How do you see the future? Do you see store traffic continuing to be as important as it is, getting more important, slightly less? You know, the increase of .com is slowly but surely increasing. It's not the dramatic hockey stick, certainly it was, or predicted it was at the beginning or in the middle of the COVID era. But, you know, if you had to get out your crystal ball, once again, I can't imagine anyone else who's got a better perspective. How are you thinking about store traffic in the next 18 to 24 months?
Well, okay, so the pandemic was a profound example of how resilient physical retailing is. And, you know, I've now worked in and around this industry for 30 years, and I'm convinced store traffic will always be important. In research for the book, I stumbled upon a Harvard Business Review article interview with Jeff Bezos, the founder and former CEO of Amazon. And he was asked, what do you see coming in the next 5 or 10 years? And he says, well, I could guess at that. But he said, you know what, at Amazon, we spend a lot more time trying to figure out what won't change in the next 5 or 10 years, because it's those things that don't change that we can throw up some pretty impressive revenue flywheels around. And he kind of went on from there. And so, look, I'll say this, it's my belief that, and this is based on some observational research that I've done, only about half of retailers today even count how much traffic is coming in their store. And I just think that this is a profound opportunity that every retailer has. And so I just don't see shopper traffic and the importance of traffic and measuring conversion going anywhere anytime soon. In fact, I would say in this day and age, Michael, because there's so many choices for shoppers today, that no retailer, not one, can afford to squander even a single store visit. That's why it's a gift, and it's a very precious gift at that.
How do people get in touch with you, learn about your services, and get a hold of your book?
Headcount.com is where you'll find information on the work that we do. And starting September 30th, my book will be available wherever books are sold, Amazon, and in physical stores as well, I might add.
Outstanding. Listen, Mark, it's been such a treat chitting and chatting about what you do and who you are, and you've got a vast amount of experience that you share with the industry. So thanks for joining me on the Voice of Retail podcast. Real treat to chit and chat, and look forward to seeing you in person again real soon.
Thank you, Michael. The treat was mine.
All right, I'm going to see if I can stop recording this one. I'll stop recording without hanging up on you. Oh, I think I did it. Hey, that was great. Thank you.
Hey, thank you, Michael. That was a lot of fun. Thanks for sending these thoughtful questions and setup. Podcasts are only as good as the questions that come, and I really appreciated receiving your prep questions, and that was excellent. I appreciated speaking with you.
That's great. This will be, send me whatever image you want for your bio and pick, and any links you want me to put in the show notes. This will be Friday's episode. We'll get promoted in Retail This Week, and RCC promotes it as well. And so this will be Friday's episode. And you're my first interview. I am interviewing Lauren Steinberg from LeBlanc, the grand poobah of all things digital and loyalty now at LeBlanc for Remarkable Retail. So that'll be a good... looking forward to that later in the day. So
fantastic. Hey, what do I need to do? I'd like to send you a book so it can make it to the famous bookshelf you have.
Yeah, love to have it. Listen, I'll send you my address and welcome the opportunity and throw it in the back and showcase it as well.
I appreciate that.
Yeah,
thanks so much, Michael. And I look forward to our paths crossing again. Cheers.
Have a great rest of your day. Bye-bye. Thanks for tuning into this episode of The Voice of Retail. If you haven't already, follow on your favorite podcast platform so new episodes will land automatically each week. And be sure and check out my other retail industry media properties, the Remarkable Retail Podcast with Steve Dennis and the Global E-Commerce Leaders Podcast. I'm your host, Michael LeBlanc, Senior Retail Advisor, Keynote Speaker. If you want more content or chat, follow me on LinkedIn. Safe travels, everyone.